Good morning, America. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy. Got an interesting show today. Interesting news coming out from the IRS and taxpayer advocate here. Some mistakes that the IRS made, and a formal apology that's also in the news. So stay tuned. We're going to go over that. But I really want to take advantage of this. And we get tons of questions now, and I have been getting tons of questions as to what to do when you get an IRS notice or letter that doesn't quite make sense. You've paid your taxes, you should have your refund, but you don't know why they're sending you more collection notices. So we're going to go through getting some scary letters, the different types of letters, and I have touched on this before, but then we're going to dive into how to respond, how to know exactly what's accurately going on with your tax case, with your tax accounts, and to get it corrected. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. I think we've got an interesting show today, and we're going to start off with something that's a little more humorous. To some others, it can be concerning, but this has to do with regulating cow farts. So I say this, to be a little funny. Hey, we need a humor in our day. This comes from CNN, but this has been in the works for a little while. Farmers have protested, and this is in Denmark. No, yeah, in Denmark. So they've taken their tractors, they've thrown eggs at Parliament and at politicians, saying, "Look, this is crazy. You're killing us." But it's a tax on methane releases from livestock, so mainly cows and pigs. And so Denmark has a huge dairy production, and this ends up to being an annual tax of $96 per cow. Well, that doesn't sound like much, but when you add that to the cost of production for a whole herd of dairy cows, it's going to hurt, and it's going to drive food prices up. So we talk about ways to help the poor. Driving food prices up is not the best way to do it. So they're doing this to raise money for green energy programs to fight climate change, and they're going to be investing billions in the biggest transformation of the Danish landscape in recent years. So this will be the first country in the world with a carbon tax on agriculture. So while the overall dairy industry and the larger corporations welcome the agreement, farmers, and they say some farmers, they held protests all across Europe, blocking roads with tractors, pelting European Parliament with eggs, and just saying, "You're killing us, you're hurting us," and driving up expenses. So it goes into some numbers about the number of cows and how much methane is actually released from cows. And so there's one of their big frustrations is they're taxing cows, but I mean, how do you really not have farts from cows? What's next? Will they be regulating human farts? But that's a joke. But we thought this would be a joke too. We'll see what happens. And we'll see what happens is this is something that's been suggested and pushed here in the United States as well. So be mindful of that, and whether or not this is actually going to create more issues and problems by raising food prices. Again, the more you tax things, the more you make it. And this isn't on beef so much. This is on dairy cows. So milk, yogurt, cheese, and those, especially milk, can affect children as well. Next article, just quick tidbit, touching on Boeing again. U.S. prosecutors are now pushing for the DOJ to file criminal charges against Boeing. So they had a settlement agreement following two deadly crashes where it killed 346 people, and this is, I believe, 2017, 2018. 2018, 2019. But Boeing has continued to have many, many issues, and they say, look, they violated this agreement. They're putting people at risk. And this might rise to criminal charges against Boeing executives that have allowed quality to continue to suffer. And again, this is something, puts people's lives at risk. So again, we need good policies. We need consequences for companies that won't do things right. So again, it just kind of goes over a lot of the same things that we've touched on before. But just want to highlight that. The next article is interesting, and this is from Breitbart News. This is going to France. So Emmanuel Macron, who is the current, I believe it's president of France, he's the current leader in France. He looks like he's going to lose the next election. A lot of leaders throughout Europe, a lot of center-left leaders have lost their elections recently, from Germany. So quite a few of them, I'm not sure exactly who, but it's been in the news that a lot of them have lost elections, and Macron looks to be next on the chopping block. So I don't really, he gets out with this crazy language saying, look, it's going to be a civil war if I lose. How many times do politicians say that? Our own politicians say that. It'll be the end of the world if you elect the other guy. But being that France has a parliamentary system, you have two extremes, one to the left, one to the right of him, the populist right-wing National Rally or the New Popular Front, and both of them are claiming to go off of populism. And so he pretty much lashed out to the right and the left. And why did he do that? Because he's trailing in the polls. He's in third. His party is in third place. And he called snap elections because of what happened with the European Parliament elections. So again, when popular opinion swings crazy one way, it can change the government like that in a parliamentary system. So again, I'm not going to dive too much into his criticisms of both the right and the left. Basically, the left wants and accuses him of being communism light. He's socialism. He's socialist. So it's just a step further for his government. But he just doesn't want to go that far. I don't know. There's been a lot of issues in France, and a lot of issues that they've seen here. So they had a shooting of an Algerian teenager, and that triggered BLM-style riots across the country. Had over $1 billion in damage, 800 police officers injured. Again, France is known for having a lot of riots. It's very chaotic. It is not the United States, so but they're going through a lot of the same things. So we're seeing this throughout the world, from Bolsonaro and in Brazil. You have Milei in Argentina. It's happening across Europe, where you have populists winning, and it's thrown around. Half the time, it's a good word depending on who's using it. Half the time, it's a bad word depending on who's using it. So, the right and the left have used this title of being populist. And what does it mean to be a populist? What is this? So again, it's kind of a amorphous term, that's been used and abused by different sides of the political spectrum. Andrew Jackson here, this first thing in one of his campaign things, hey, I'm an ordinary guy, vote for me against these gators in the swamp in Washington, D.C. That pretty much was his campaign. Old Hickory, he's an old soldier in general. And there was a lot of truth that Andrew Jackson had many, many faults. Being very racist was one of them. But he campaigned on being, taken into Washington and won handily. Teddy Roosevelt would be the next. That definitely ran on a populist thing, appealing to the people. And so supporting the people's rights over the establishment, over the entrenched government. LBJ, with the Great War on Poverty, and then Obama did it to some extent, and President Trump definitely appeals to a populist idea to rally and get votes. So, basic definition: it must claim to speak on behalf of the ordinary people, which appeals to the ordinary people or the voter, and it's in opposition to an elite establishment which stops them from getting what they want. If you go to Webster's, a member of a political party claiming to represent the common people, a believer in rights, wisdom, and virtues of the common people. In the 1890s, it was a political party claiming to represent agrarian interests. In California in particular, it wasn't so much agrarian, it was definitely against the good old boy clubs in government, which were GOP and Democrat, that were highly corrupt, controlled by big interests like the railroads, etc. And there are all kinds of stories about how after every vote they would find all the papers. I forget what they called it. That would be surround stacks of bills were, they were all in the garbage because of all the bribes that were paid out to all the representatives of both parties. And the people got sick of it, and they said, okay, we're going to do a recall. We're going to do a bunch of other things. So 2 examples of populism. First one, Democrat primary for 2016. And these are recent. And again, this is their opinion that the Democrat primary is openly stolen from Bernie Sanders. Again, this is the Democrats have their own way of electing their candidates, and they have a lot of super candidates. They have a lot of hand-picked people, and a lot of people argue or felt like Bernie Sanders should have been the candidate for president, but the Democrat establishment thought that he would be a lot easier to defeat than Hillary Clinton, and so they put their thumbs on the scale, so to speak. Donald Trump is kind of his own flavor, but there's no question that he is definitely focused on populist ideas, appealing to the masses, make America great again, and really attacked the establishment. And it's only fueled this feeling, this populist fever supporting him, the idea that the establishment has been after him. The raid on Mar-a-Lago, having so many different cases filed against him, many with serious flaws, many that have failed, and in prosecutions that have been ended or are ending, only fuels the fire of people thinking that Trump is the target. Again, there's a lot of things that say he's only standing between us and them. So we're going to have to take a quick break, and we'll come back to this in a short moment. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to kind of switch gears here. This populist theme is going to kind of run throughout the show a little bit, but we're going to switch it to a little bit more on economic news. Auto sales are expected to slow down, so the auto industry has really been thriving on the very high demand, low supply of vehicles, low inventory, and prices have definitely climbed depending on the vehicle. For most vehicles, it's more expensive than ever now to buy a new vehicle. But again, things are starting to change. So vehicle inventory levels are growing. Incentives to buy now are increasing just to keep products moving. And so, a lot of that is based around uncertainty, given the interest rates and economic news as well as a presidential election. People don't know what's going to happen whenever uncertainty is never good in a market. It always makes people kind of hold back a little bit. So again, it just kind of goes through there. What I said just covers most of this. It's good for consumers, people actually looking to purchase some newer vehicles. And it talks about when there's some companies are doing better, General Motors, Toyota, Honda. A lot of EV manufacturers are really suffering. So Tesla, the Stellantis, and just to be, if you've been holding off, this might be the time to go look for a new vehicle. And again, a slowdown in the economy might actually help some people that have been holding on and putting off buying a needed vehicle. So this is from the Washington Examiner, and it talks about, this is again a bit political here, Biden's border budget buster. But again, that the numbers here are interesting, and this is what I really want to dive into is the numbers behind this. And this comes from the CBO. And then, again, it starts off that they've always underestimated Medicaid spending by billions of dollars every year. Now, Medicaid is one of the things that's just really exploding. Medicaid spending is exploding in our country and is a huge part of why our government spending is growing by leaps and bounds. And a lot of people say, hey, I paid into this. There are plenty of areas of Medicaid and Medicare that are affected not just by people using it that paid into the system their whole lives, but by illegal immigration. And this is one thing that the study focused on. It says, since 2000, they've underestimated the cost of Medicare by about $15 billion, while overestimating Social Security and Medicare spending. So they've kind of balanced out, but it's getting even worse. So they bumped up Medicaid spending by another $5 billion a year over the next 10 years, and even then, the new projections are looking to be too low. Why is this? Something's greatly adding to the Medicare spending, and we get a clearer look due to changes in law. So again, this is part of federalism. You have certain states that can pass laws and try something different compared to the rest of the country and see what the result is. So Florida Senate Bill 1718 mandated the use of E-Verify, banned local governments from issuing ID cards to legal immigrants, and ordered all hospitals to ask for their legal status. They're just asking. They can't ban hospitals for caring for illegal immigrants. And as most people know, you can't be turned away from emergency services. So people that, and this is part of the problem. This is one of the big things that Obamacare completely missed, didn't even try to correct or address. We have about 3 to 4%. It's probably even smaller than that. We have a very small percent of the population that use and cost the U.S. government and states more money than ever in healthcare. And a lot of it is because they know they can go to the ER time and time again, every time there's a problem, every time they have a scare, and they are habitual users of emergency services. And it's so expensive that a lot of emergency rooms have been shutting down and closing because they can't afford the cost. It is too expensive to offer this services where they can't turn anybody away due to federal law. But yet a lot of these people, they can't bill. So a lot of it goes to Medicare. And it's not just illegal immigrants. There's citizens. And one of the big arguments here is that there are alternatives to having people just use and abuse the system. So if they can't be part of the system, and they're just using the emergency rooms time and time again, it just drives up the cost for everybody else. One suggestion was to take people that are habitual users and focus on giving them, getting them to urgent care, getting them access through Obamacare where they can get the treatment they need, rather than, and that's going to be a lot more effective, rather than having them just run to the ER every single time there's a problem. You don't get effective long-term care by just running to the ER. You're seeing a different doctor every time. And it's really the most expensive way to have people get treated. Going back to Florida, so this is not just an illegal immigrant issue that I want to highlight, but the cost of Medicare, or Medicaid, which is really exploding our budget. So they didn't ban anybody, they just asked for information. And there's plenty of other reasons, parts of the Senate Bill 1718 that really was designed to stop illegal immigration in the state, to get rid of the magnets, the pull, the benefits that people get when they come to this country. And again, it was largely successful. A lot of illegal immigrants have left Florida, which is what the goal was. Florida's economy is apparently growing faster now. Unemployment is lower. Wages keep rising. So they're not putting in minimum wages, but their wages are rising. And that's because when you get rid of very, very cheap labor, employers have to pay people more. So diving into the numbers. So the last fiscal year before this new law was passed, you had 146,000 emergency medical assistance approvals, which cost $171 million. It's required by federal law, but yet the feds do not pick up all the tab. They paid for 99 million of this, which again affects our national budget, and Florida had to pay the other 72 million. So it hurts state budgets as well as national budgets, and this is a problem across the country. So when people just go to emergency rooms, Medicaid, all the costs get dumped on Medicaid. A huge portion of the bill gets stuck with the state, about 40% of the state. And then the rest gets stuck, the feds pick up the tab. So this year, they're expecting to go from 171 million down to 100 million. So that's a 40% reduction, saves taxpayers $41 million to the federal government, but also state taxes as well. So where are these people going? Other states, probably. But when you have mass illegal immigration, this is one of the expenses, and when that is exploding the system. So can we afford to have more, open borders where people are just flooding into the country at the rate of millions per year? I'm all for legal immigration. But if we're going to vote for open borders, that's fine. Just understand the cost and understand that taxes will eventually have to go up to deal with this, because it is a huge problem. And so they're saying uncompensated emergency medical spending, that's just one of the costs. There's housing, food, education, and because the actual costs of open borders are spread across the economy, it's really hard to know exactly what the true cost is. Something to be aware of. It affects the overall budget. It affects the federal budget, state taxes. It has a lot of impacts, and again, it's been on the news a lot as to some very heinous crimes being committed. So, but economically, it affects everybody's everybody's wallet. Long term, most of them become great contributing citizens, but when they're working outside the system, it's a disadvantage to them as well. So again, it hurts the people that are outside the system. because they can't get the services that they need. So moving on, this is an interesting article. This almost never happens. And this goes back to, they had Charles Littlejohn was a former IRS contractor, not vetted properly by the IRS. He got in there, and this isn't the first time the IRS has leaked. And it's interesting that this article from Money Watch or CBS News doesn't mention anything about the Trump tax returns being leaked by the same guy. So they had billionaire Ken Griffin, and they issued a rail apology as part of a settlement with him. So the IRS was sued by him, and rightly so. Thousands of other Americans had their personal information leaked to the press as well. The press quickly gobbled it up and released, famous people's tax information out to the world. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, just being a couple of them. And, they went ad nauseum as to how the wealthiest Americans minimize their taxes. If they're doing it legally, though, they already know that. It's just a huge expose, and it's private information. So part of this is when the government allows things to happen, and whether or not they weren't following their standards here with Littlejohn, which is why they were sued successfully. I'm sure there was a massive settlement here that's not going to be disclosed. These are huge problems, and when you have massive breaches, there's all kinds of personal information that leads to identity theft, that can lead to all kinds of issues. And if you've ever had your identity stolen, it's insane. So the government can and should do a much better job. The official apology letter is at irs.gov, and it's right in the top of their news. So again, I saw that today and didn't think much of it. And then there's all kinds of news about this settlement. And so hopefully the IRS cracks down and makes sure that this is done better. So they say they've made substantial investments in its data security to strengthen its safeguarding of taxpayer information. That also means it's harder for people to go in and get information. You have to verify your address. You have to verify all kinds of information. So they're trying to improve services. Hopefully they do. Next tab, or next article. This is a quick one from the Sacramento Bee. Now, the Sacramento Bee, I grew up delivering the Sacramento Bee as a kid. It's a newspaper I delivered in middle school. But they have a reality check, which is rare for them. Gavin Newsom claims California is not a high tax state. That's a big pill to swallow. And they go through, he's partially correct in that and this is really kind of the funny part here. For the bottom 40% of families, or those with incomes of $48,000 or less, California taxes are lower than states like Florida and Texas. But if you earn more than $48,000, they definitely are a high tax state. So here's the kicker. Do you think you're making $48,000 in California and living above the poverty line? I don't know anywhere in California you can survive for $48,000 without being on government assistance. Again, government approved, housing. You have to be really squeaking by. So these are people living on the margins. And the idea that 40% of families are surviving on $48,000 or less is insane, because that's $4,000 a month. Housing alone in California would take half of that. I don't see how families are surviving, and 40% of families in California are living on that. That is just highlights extreme poverty going on in California. So again, they talk about tax breaks, etc., and kind of break into it. And they're saying the bottom percent pay more in Texas and in Florida, but again, the huge numbers. in California is, again, Texas and Florida might have more taxes. The taxes are more level than in California. But that's why a lot of the wealthier people are fleeing California, and it's just scary to think that with the increase here in costs, that people just can't survive. I talk to people all the time in California. I have friends and family there, and it's just scary. So, quick run through the many faces of inflation from the Epic Times. This is good to be mindful of, just because there's so much that isn't considered when talking about inflation. There's so much more to the real numbers and what's actually happening in the economy that's not being reported by our government. So he shares a little story. He goes in and had a dish of Mediterranean prawns that sounded delicious, but there was a huge pile of croutons with 4 shrimp for $24. Oh no, $32. So it's about $8 per shrimp. Is that a little nuts? Yes. Again, this guy went to an airport. Just some personal anecdotes here. But some of the things that are adding to inflation are shrinkflation, smaller packaging, less product. Food sellers, they're using cheaper ingredients, potatoes, pasta, breads, and trying to use that to fill people up instead of providing meat and protein. Service costs, they're not considered as part of inflation. I complain about this all the time, getting haircuts. I have multiple kids. Right now at home we have 3. But getting them haircuts, the cost of a haircut in the last few years has doubled. That's just crazy. Car repair, pet grooming, basic medical care, all of those costs have gone up, and these are all service industries not figured into the government numbers for inflation. Taxes and fees have gone up. Again, it's just, if you look into pretty much your phone bill, most utilities, the bills have gone up, but they're slipping the costs in there. Shipping and delivery costs have gone up from 10 to 12 for overnight delivery to most places. They don't even offer it anymore. So overnight delivery is pretty much unheard of these days because it's just too expensive. Phone and utility bills have gone up. Taxes, your property taxes, all kinds of tax properties. So again, it's one of the big things they talk about. Again, we don't see promotions, discounts, credits for loyalty anymore, freebies for trying stuff. You don't see those. But one of the big things here that has really gone up, and I'm just trying to wrap this up before the break, insurance. Car insurance, home insurance, life insurance, health insurance in particular has gone up. None of these costs are figured into inflation numbers. So these are all areas where the numbers have gone up, but they're ignored by the PCI and CPI that, especially the consumer price index. It doesn't calculate these because they consider them too volatile, but while those prices are raising like crazy, the government's trying to claim that inflation is still around 3.5%, 3.4%. It's probably triple that when you look at the real numbers. And here's a big cost of inflation going up. The cost of loans, interest paid, that's going through the roof. Business loans, personal loans, mortgages, credit cards, it's just more expensive to purchase these. Again, rents, home prices, also not included inflation. So when you're trying to plan for your family, when you're trying to make costs, be very mindful of these, and we're going to take a short break. Welcome back, everybody. Kind of ran out of time on this. Just want to touch up on the very tail end of this. Um, this is why it's so important to prepare your finances to get things together because the costs are going up, and inflation is worse than we see. And I see it hurt people day in and day out. So by preparing financially, you can improve your situation, be ready for to handle increased costs, but also get rid of, one of the worst costs out there is credit card debt, paying interest on different items. It really is hurting a lot of people. So another thing that's hurting a lot of people, and this is an interesting article that came out through notice from Taxpayer Advocate, talking about what do you do if an IRS balance due notice, if you get an IRS balance due notice for taxes you've already paid. And I want to broaden the scope and talk about the different letters that can come in on cases or to taxpayers. So the first kind, be very aware that if you have some kind of IRS issues, the best scams are based on a kernel of truth. This has always been true. But especially today with so many scams out there, if you have some kind of state or IRS notice, it is public record. It is out there when you owe taxes and a tax lien is filed. So a lot of times, as soon as a tax lien is filed, you'll get inundated with notices. Now, these are usually not from the government, either the state or the IRS. They usually have been sending you notices. Maybe it's to the wrong address. Maybe it's to a family member, or maybe you're just not paying attention to your mail, which unfortunately a lot of people do when there's a problem. When they start getting letters, it's easy to just kind of bury your head in the sand and ignore these. Don't ignore them. Even if these are scam letters, they're an indication that there is a problem that probably needs to be resolved. So first of all, I want to talk about letters from scammers. They're designed to scare you. They're designed to threaten you. They're designed to make you feel that you have to pick up the phone and pay somebody right then and right there. Now, if you're not sure and you're getting letters that are scary and confusing, give us a call. We review letters for free. And again, there's plenty of times when we look at letters, someone scans them in, emails to me, and I can tell right away or very quickly what's going on with these letters. And that doesn't matter if it's an IRS, state, or county letter. So be very aware that people are trying to scam you. If you get phone calls as well, the IRS almost never calls people. If they're asking for payment on the spot, be very aware. Ask for their identification number and also for their manager's number. If it's a scam, they will automatically get off the phone. Second of all, this is another frustrating thing. I had a client that we've been working on his case for quite some time, and he got a bunch of letters recently in the mail, and they were scary letters. You'll call us, you're about to have all your assets seized, etc., and you need to call us right now. And they looked and sound like, when you read it, most people would assume it's from the government, but they're actually from lead generation companies. So these are, I don't think this is the most ethical way to get clients, is to scare people into calling, but there are a lot of companies out there and they sell these leads, and sometimes they're selling these leads to decent companies, but a lot of times it's, when you call, you're talking directly to a salesperson. You're not talking to an attorney. You're not talking to someone, and their whole job is to bring you on and collect money from you, and oftentimes they'll give you bad information. So this is somebody I've been working with for a year and a half. He fully trusts me. He sent me the letters right away. I was able to tell him what these letters were very quickly. He said, okay, well, thank you for handling this for me. When you get these letters, find out. Now, the scary thing is they're not always false letters. So the states will send a sheriff out to issue a warrant. Now, a warrant is it's not a warrant for your arrest. It's a warrant. They call it a warrant to scare people, but really is, hey, here's your notice. You owe us taxes. You need to contact us. The IRS letters are very clear. And I can look at a letter and right away know if it's an IRS letter or not. But one of the big concerns here, and this is what I really want to focus the rest of our time is what to do if you receive those balance due notices and it's for an issue that's already should have been resolved, or the IRS is incorrect. Either you got a 1099 incorrectly, or the IRS misapplied your income tax. We have plenty of cases right now where the IRS either messed up, or they got bad information, or they processed. In one case, they processed their 2020 return with all of their 2019 information. Just copied it over. Someone misclicked, someone goofed and did a funny there, and it's causing them all kinds of problems. How to fix these things? First of all, you have to reach out, or either you or a professional, and find out what's going on. If you have a tax account with irs.gov, and yes, I know it's very intrusive, they do the face scan, all that, but you can get in there and you can see what kind of notices you received lately. You can see if these letters came from the IRS, or you can always reach out to a tax professional. Like I said, we do a free letter review, just to tell you if this is a real thing or not. Now, if you're interested, we can always, and most companies do this, they do what's called a tax account review or an investigation fee, where they just go and they pull your transcripts and they see exactly what's going on with your case. That information is also available on irs.gov. But reading through it and understanding it might be daunting for most people. So again, when you do get a notice, when you do get a letter, one, make sure it's legitimate. And if it's just a threatening letter and someone trying to get you to call them, they're usually probably not the companies you want to hire, because they're just trying to bring people on and get you to start paying them, whether or not they know whether they can help you and actually do something for you. So when you do get a legitimate letter, this article focuses on you get a balance due and you've already paid the taxes. Be mindful that everything moves slowly at the IRS. I have a case right now where they paid the balance in full. So the payments are showing on the IRS system, but they have a credit on 1 year and a balance on another year. All they have to do is move the credit to where there's a balance, and then there's zero tax due. But the IRS doesn't typically do that on their own. Sometimes their system will account for it, but I've had to call in multiple times to try to get them to make this adjustment. And these departments that you need to talk to are very difficult to get a hold of. So it can be very difficult to handle something like this on your own. But refunds, usually they will get processed, and you can pull your transcripts to see what's going on with the refund. And they even have a tool on irs.gov called Where's My Refund? So again, having that irs.gov account gives you a lot of information and can really help you out. It takes roughly 60 days for them to process and apply a payment. I always follow up and see, okay, one, do they have the payment? And then follow up and make sure it's processed correctly, so it's applied correctly. And again, the thing is here, don't panic, don't make a bad decision that's only going to make the situation worse. So these are actually some good advice, and Taxpayer Advocate is supposed to help, and usually they do try when they are available and you can get through to them. They can be very helpful. They're absolutely overwhelmed right now, like most areas of customer service in the IRS. Don't ignore letters. Verify your taxes were paid. That's why it's always helpful. And they say don't pay it again. If you verify that it actually happened, don't pay it again. So when you pay your taxes, don't use money orders. Don't use cashier checks. If they get lost, you're out of your money. Best way is to pay online through irs.gov. You can pay through your bank. There's a small fee to use a debit or credit card because they use processing centers. And that's the easiest way to pay. Or you can walk into a local IRS office, pay by check, or so that you have proof that they cast the check, and then you'll get a receipt right then and there. That if you have that receipt or a canceled check, or when you pay online, you get a receipt immediately. That's your proof of payment. So if they lose it, whatever, you can walk into the IRS and say, here's my proof, I paid this, credit my account. And they'll do it. Because then it's on them. You did everything you were supposed to do legally. So again, it recommends creating an online account and using irs.gov. I really don't like the big brother aspect of how intrusive it is to get online and verify your identity. But the IRS is making it very helpful for taxpayers when you can get on and use this. So it talks about viewing your notices online. What if there's a mistake? Oh no, if I made a mistake, then you just correct it. Here's the number to call. If you do have questions here, 1-800-829-1040. Here's the thing. There's voice bot options, but call, they say don't call on Mondays and Tuesdays. Call Wednesday, Thursday, and Fridays, but call between 5 and 7 p.m. Have your canceled checks, amended returns, whatever, there to go over with them. If you still need help, you can always call and talk to a tax professional. You can contact Taxpayer Advocate. Their wait times are right now, it takes 5 to 6 months to get someone from Taxpayer Advocate assigned to your case. You can call and make an appointment. That's one of the things I did yesterday is I left the number or shared the number for the appointment line. I'm going to do that again. I just have to find it. It's 844-545-5640. It's going to be months out before you actually sit down and talk to someone, and your issue might be resolved by then. But there's also free or low-cost representation to go through low-income tax clinics. And these are scattered across the country. If you can reach out to a low-income tax clinic, I recommend do it. They can help and provide a lot of issues. So more issues and errors. One of the big things I see are 1099s and incorrect reporting. Sometimes people get a W-2. Little more rare, but it happens. So again, when you have these issues, you can correct them. The sooner, if you get an incorrect 1099, first thing you need to do is go and try to have the person that issued it correct it. And it might even be healthy. Again, it's a little bit of overboard, but again, most of these problems pop up years later when the IRS finally says, oh, you didn't report this 1099, or we got this 1099 later showing that you had excess income. There's two ways to deal with it. You can go correct it at the source if it's incorrect. Secondly, you can pull up your bank statements and prove that you never got the income that's been reported to you, but then you have to file a fraud alert on your case. But this is where having an online account is helpful. You can go and get a PIN to prevent any kind of information, and then the IRS will conduct its own investigation to see if this is actual legitimate activity or was it just a mistake. But the IRS is horrible on not correcting things unless there's some kind of correction from the source. Now, if it was done fraudulently and you report it as such, I would also report it to the FBI and use that police report to take to the IRS and show, hey, someone used my income incorrectly. I just got a call the other day. For the last 4 years, someone's been claiming a gentleman on their tax return, and they're young, so they're just starting to file. They've been working, but they're at 23. So the last 4 years, every time they file, their return gets kicked back. I'm like, I wish you would have called me back. When you report it, they don't know who's claiming him as a dependent. But again, this is fraud. And, again, there's too much fraud where people that haven't been claimed, or young people are claimed as dependents that shouldn't be. And he should be able to claim himself and get the benefits of that on his tax return. So we're running out of time. There's always too much to talk about. But big thing here, if you get these letters, you're confused, you don't know what to do, get some help. And again, we do that. It brings more business to us by doing right by people. But if you have questions, we will refer you to low income tax clinic if it doesn't make sense to hire us. We do refer people all the time and give free advice all the time. So when you get those scary letters, just call us. You can just fax it in or email it to us. We'll review it for free right there in the consultation. And make sure that you can have the peace of mind that you're entitled to as taxpayers, especially if you're doing everything right, or even if you're not. We'll help you get to that place where you don't have to worry about taxes and from the IRS or the state, and you can sleep easy at night. So we always say that we work hard to give people peace of mind, and that can be worth worth a lot. So again, if you have questions, reach out to us 520-485-7371, or you can reach out to us through our website at guardiantaxlaw.com, or check out these shows. The past shows are all being posted on our YouTube channel and being aired daily, the fresh new ones at thesmartmoneyculture.tv.